that going for us. Wonderful. So just to restate then, thank you all for joining us for the Healthy Oregon Workforce Training Opportunity Grant Programs info session number 1. We're here to talk about the round 6 requests for grant proposals. And we're just going to spend a little bit of time talking about some logistics. I should also say I'm Melissa Yates. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the How-To Program Coordinator. So we're excited to have you all here with us today. I know there's always a little bit of shuffling here at the beginning as folks are getting settled in. So we just wanted to share a little bit about our logistics in addition to that prompt that you all just got, that the webinar is being recorded. We'll be posting the recording on the Oregon Buys website for folks who aren't able to join us today. In addition to that, we do have a live transcription that's available. You can select that option at the bottom of Zoom. There's a caption option. It might be under the more, the 3 dots for you. This morning, we also have ASL interpretation being offered and highlighted or spotlighted in our video as well. If you're able, we always love to see who's here with us today. So appreciate having, for those faces I was able to see who's here with us, but also know whatever it looks like for you to show up and be here with us today. We're excited to have you listening in. And if you have questions as we work our way through the session today, we would love for you to use the chat box. Really helpful for us because it's also going to help us in terms of documenting the questions that come up so that we're able to make sure we cover everything and also share those answers back out for folks who aren't able to be here today. So I'll be keeping an eye on the chat as we work our way through the session today. Some questions I'll be able to answer right then in the moment. Some I may wait until we get to sort of a breaking point in the presentation information or hold off until a little bit later in the presentation. So don't worry if we haven't gotten to it. We are keeping track and want to make sure that we'll get as many questions or all the questions answered as we can. Every now and then there may be something that we're not able to answer in the session today, and we'll follow up in writing with folks to get those answers to you as well. So really appreciate you all being here with us today to help us talk more about the How-To programs round 6 funding. So just a few things for us to talk about in terms of shared language. We know there's a lot of information to cover, and sometimes we jump into talking in acronyms and abbreviations. So we just wanted to take a moment to highlight a few of the most common terms that you might hear from us. So one of those is the Request for Grant Proposals, or RFGP. We may also refer to OHA for Oregon Health Authority and OHSU for Oregon Health and Science University. You'll be hearing more about all of these pieces as we work our way into the session today. And then you've already heard me reference the Healthy Oregon Workforce Training Opportunity, or How-To grant program. Excellent. So one of the things that we would love to get a little information from all of you is to help us know who's here. There are so many folks in attendance. We're really excited to see all of the interest. And so one of the ways to help us have a little bit more of a sense of who's here is for you to introduce yourself in the chat. If you don't mind sharing your name, your pronouns if you wish, and then the organization that you're a part of in the chat, that's a great way for us to get an idea of who is here with us in this great big group. Another thing that folks can do too is if you want to add your organization name to the display in Zoom, you can actually hover over your name in the little Zoom window, right click and select rename. It'll let you add, like for myself, I have Melissa Yates and OHA. And it is wonderful to see this big group and all this huge range of organizations that are represented. So really excited to see all of this coming into the chat. While that continues, please don't hesitate to keep adding your information into the chat. We wanted to just take a quick minute to highlight some of the team that's here to support the How To program. So first, there's myself, as I mentioned, I'm Melissa Yates. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the How To Grant Program Coordinator. And I thought I would pass it over to Suzanne Chrisman, who will be helping with today's presentation. We would work our way through our little list here for some short introductions. If folks could share your name, pronouns, and your role, we would appreciate it. I'll pass it to Suzanne.
Hello, everybody. My name is Suzanne Christman, and I'm with the Oregon Department of Human Services. Our contracts office sits in that agency, but I am on the OHA team. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm your contact for the contract slash RFGP for this opportunity. Glad to be with you. Katrina?
Yeah, hi everyone. I am off camera because I am moving your slides today. So my name is Katrina Dowdy. I use the pronouns she, her, and hers. I am a new addition to the team. I am taking part of a 2-year job rotation, joining from Equity and Inclusion. And my time will be split 50-50 between How To and the Provider Incentive team. So my role is the Healthcare Workforce Pathways Coordinator, and I will pass it to Ritu if she's here today.
Thank you, Katrina. Hi, everyone. My name is Ritu Jangana, and I am in the capacity as a healthcare workforce team manager, and How To and Melissa and Katrina both report to me. I'm also in a job rotation, just like Katrina, also coming in from Equity and Inclusion Division and Realty. And so you just like Katrina, my pronouns are she and her, and I'm in a job rotation for 1 year. I'm going to pass it to Neelam if Neelam is here today.
Hi, everyone. Neelam Gupta, she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Clinical Supports, Integration, and Workforce. So nice to see so many people on today's webinar.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, it's wonderful to see the big group and just how many folks are interested. And thank you to our team for all the work and time and energy that goes into supporting the program as well. Really appreciate it. So just real briefly, I thought I would walk us through a little bit of what you can expect in our session today. So we really are focused on walking through the pieces of the request for grant proposals. I'm just trying to highlight some of the key pieces and hopefully help to make this process as smooth as possible for you. So we'll start off with a little bit of the background about the program, go through some of the requirements, the timeline, and then also that fourth piece there is kind of the heart of all of this, is talking more about the proposal itself, what it's going to look like, what pieces of information you'll be submitting for us. And then Suzanne will walk us through a little bit of what it looks like to actually work in the Oregon BICE system for our process here. I am also going to drop a link in the chat here for folks to access the Oregon BICE website. We know that you've all found it because that's where you got the information for today's session. But also wanted to let folks know, just for quick reference, if you need to pull that up. And for myself, let's see, did anybody else lose the screen sharing, or is that just me? Do we still have our PowerPoint?
Still there.
Okay, interesting.
Melissa, maybe try changing your view.
Yeah, I will. That's we were just talking about the many adventures of technology this morning, so. Apologies all. Give me 1 second. This is a new one for me. Well, I am going to be confident that we are still on the agenda slide. Hopefully that is still the case.
We are on the background and purpose of how-to funding opportunity.
Thank
Yep.
you. There we go. Magically. Got it too. Thank you all for your patience. So yes, we'll start off with that background piece. That is also what you are going to find in the first pages of the request for grant proposal, actually starting on page 3. But just a few things that we wanted to highlight from that section, which is really thinking about what the program's purpose is, right? That so much of this is going to be the lens that we're viewing the proposals for or through in terms of evaluating. You'll also see some of these this background and purpose for the program reflected in the rubric. So we just wanted to kind of take a second to start there. As the how-to program is really focused on a commitment to help make sure that the healthcare workforce meets the needs of all Oregonians and that it's reflective of the communities that are being served. So the how-to program has just been around since 2018. It's administered under the direction of the Oregon Health Policy Board, and it's a partnership between Oregon Health Authority and Oregon Health and Science University. We've also had 5 rounds of funding to date for 40 projects. We do have the link for that on the slide and that you're seeing now. I'll also drop that into the chat for you so you can see some examples of the previously funded projects. So as I was mentioning, just in terms of the how-to program's purpose, it's really focused on expanding health professional training to address healthcare workforce shortages, in particular in culturally and linguistically diverse groups that have been economically and socially marginalized, tribal communities, rural communities, and communities that are experiencing inequities throughout Oregon. And the focus, the aim is to support innovative, transformative, community-based training initiatives that are addressing identified local healthcare workforce shortages and expanding the diversity of the health professional workforce. So just a little bit of that sort of perspective on, again, the focus of the program, and you'll see that also reflected in the rubrics that we'll talk a little bit more about here in just a minute. At this point, I'll also mention, just as we've talked about previous rounds of funding, for the round 6 award, we have up to $9 million to award this time. And so up to $1 million of that is going to be set aside for projects that are requesting under $300,000. And no single award will be made in excess of $1 million. And as I mentioned, there's some examples, or all of the examples of previously awarded projects are on that website. Thanks, Katrina. Yeah, so we'll just having that background, wanted to talk just through a few of the requirements for the proposals. I mentioned the purpose, and again, we've highlighted some of the how-to core values, or how-to core values in the request for grant proposals, and really just seeing these reflected throughout the information that we're asking in the proposal. So how-to wants to support greater ethnic, racial, cultural, and linguistic diversity and inclusion in Oregon's healthcare workforce, advance trauma-informed care and workforce training programs, address health inequities and social determinants of health, and expand current and/or develop new health professional training in a local area. So in terms of the putting the proposal together, who can actually apply? We get a lot of questions about eligibility. So we wanted to spend a chunk of time talking through this. One of the things that we really want to emphasize is that we are inviting proposals from all areas of the healthcare system. So really broad ranging. If it is any area of the healthcare system, folks are eligible to apply for funding to support a healthcare workforce training program. So it could be behavioral health, public health, physical health, oral health, just all areas. We've had folks ask about healthcare interpreters, that is included as eligible. So really very, we know there's so many different fields, so many different career and workforce needs. I'm trying to keep it very open for communities to define what they are seeing as a need in their area and for organizations to be able to propose around that need. Eligibility is also not dependent on organization type or business designation. That's a common question that we get. So it's very wide open. Organizations can only submit one proposal per round. Organizations can be partners in other proposals, but they're limited to submitting one per round of proposals. So we've listed some of the examples of business types that are eligible to apply, like educational groups or community-based organizations, but it's entities that are seeking funding to help meet these goals, right? Trying to help launch innovative training initiatives that are addressing healthcare workforce shortages. So it is very broad and open, which I know can be pretty different compared to some other funding sources. And I'm seeing some questions in the chat. So is that 1 million for the entire project or for 1 year? It is for the entire project. Great question, Amanda. The budget requests can be flexible depending on what folks are proposing, but the maximum for the total project is up to $1 million and also up to 3 years. And Mandy, I see that question too about the 300,000. So for proposals, we have 9 million to award, and of that 9 million, we're actually setting aside 1 million that is for projects that are requesting under 300,000. And that is a practice that we've had in the past, just because we tend to have smaller organizations are often asking for smaller buckets of money, making sure that the funds that we have to award don't all go to larger projects and not make room for those smaller projects as well. A few things that the grant funds can't be used for. The how-to funds can't go towards capital construction costs. They also can't be used for maintenance of effort for existing activities. So that's a common question we get is, what does that mean? Really, if the how-to funds are being used to maintain current funding award or current funding levels and existing activities, then that would be considered maintenance of effort, right? It's trying to expand what's being offered or what's available for workforce training programs. One exception to that is for folks who already have how-to grants. The current how-to grants or grantees can't apply for a new project that's just asking to continue their current project. They can apply for a new project, something that is distinct, using different workforce strategies, different innovations from the previous project. So current grantees or previous how-to grantees are eligible to apply. It just has to be a distinctly different project. That new project will be scored separately, and the organization has to demonstrate that they are able to have capacity to support that new program as well. And in terms of kind of what can be included in that funding, it is really wide ranging. So we'll see folks that are requesting funds for capacity building. They may need to add staff. Other projects will see folks trying to address barriers for participants. So that might be stipends to support childcare or transportation costs, or one of the things that we're really asking for in these proposals is for folks to identify the need that they see within their community, their organization, the population they serve, whatever the need is that you're seeing, and then through the proposal narrative and through the budget and the budget narrative, really articulating what is needed to address those challenges. So the funds, we'll talk about the budget narrative and budget table in a minute, but really gives the opportunity for folks to spend the money where it's needed to address whatever the barrier is.
Melissa?
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to mention to everybody that those questions that we aren't able to address specifically in this video, we are collecting them and we'll be submitting those as questions and answers as a document when we upload these sessions to the RFGP opportunity notice in Organ-Buys. So I just want to make sure everybody knew that.
Thank you for that, Suzanne. Yeah, and we'll try as we go. We definitely have a lot to cover and a lot of questions, but we'll try and juggle, which questions we can answer as we work our way through. And just one other requirement to highlight to apply: organizations do need to abide by OHA's non-discrimination policy. We've listed it here on the slide. It's also provided in the same detail in the request for grant proposal as well. All right, and so just a few more logistics before we get into sort of the heart of the proposal itself and what the content is going to be. We just wanted to walk through what the timeline looks like for this request for grant proposal. So the first one, you made it here. We have that today's virtual information session. We have a second information session on November 7th. That is the same PowerPoint. So our content will be the same. Certainly expect we'll have different questions. And so what we can answer in the moment, that will be different from session to session. But just like today's session, we'll be recording it so that we can provide the recording on the Organ-Buys website for folks who want to be able to listen in. And then just as Suzanne mentioned for the questions, we'll be providing an update on Organ-Buys for the question and answer, and especially the pieces if we're not able to cover all the questions today. We then have the application due date is December 16th. At 3 p.m. That is when everything needs to be submitted in Organ-Buys. And then the hope is that we will be able to notify recipients who's been awarded by March 7th. And then we'll work through our contract or our grant agreement writing process. And the hope is that we would be able to have the grant agreements and the funding start by mid-June. All right. So that brings us really to the heart of what we're here to talk about today. And that's, what is the proposal going to look like for you all to get submitted? And also just appreciate all of the questions coming through. I'm trying to keep an eye for things that I'm able to answer quickly in the moment. And as Suzanne mentioned, we'll also highlight questions that we're not able to answer today with a written answer that will be available for everyone. And some of the questions we'll just kind of work our way through and be able to come back to here in a bit as we get to some stopping points.
I'm keeping a list.
Thanks, Suzanne. All right. Yeah, lots of great questions coming through. I would say, so I did see a question about the current grantees that apply. If a current grantee applies for a new project, are they competitive, or is there an intent to prioritize new projects? We have had organizations get funded through multiple rounds. It just is very dependent on what's being proposed and the pool of applicants, and the current grantee submitting a new project just really needs to be sure that it is distinctly different from the previous project. Otherwise, in terms of just meeting that requirement, it can't be just an expansion of the current project. And in terms, I've seen a couple questions about sort of prioritizing certain populations over others. We definitely have there's a broad range of what we're trying to include within the goals for the program, right? As we think about those core values and the purpose of the program to expand the healthcare workforce and addressing communities that are experiencing inequities throughout Oregon. And that looks really different in different regions, rural communities, or urban areas, different populations. LGBTQ plus population was mentioned, communities of color, all kinds of different populations, and all of those, it's where proposal is very broadly open to everyone, and there's not one population that's getting prioritized over another. And I saw one more question too about the maintenance of effort that we just went through a little bit ago, and I'll answer that one really quickly too, which is that maintenance of effort is for all proposals. So all proposals the funding request and the project proposed needs to expand upon what's currently being offered by your organization, so that trying to get something new off the ground, or a new set of services, or it can look really different depending on the project, but it can't be trying to maintain current sort of status quo of services or funding levels with the how-to funds. And so as we work our way through this sort of the heart of the proposal, I also saw a question about the scoring rubric, and we do have a scoring rubric that's published, so we'll talk about that as we work our way a little bit deeper here. All right, so thank you all for your patience as we juggle all the questions and so much to talk about today. I'm really loving all the interest. So in terms of what the proposal looks like for you all as you're submitting the materials for review in OregonBuys, you're going to be submitting two files. One is a PDF that is really the narrative of the project, right? It's going to have a proposer information form. It has the project narrative, a budget narrative, and some appendices. And then separate from that file, there's a separate Excel file. We've provided a template on the OregonBuys website, and that's the budget table. So that OregonBuys link that I shared in the chat earlier, that takes you to the main page where you can download the RFGP itself. Along with that RFGP, there are several documents that are included that are there to help you as part of getting your proposal ready. And one of those is the document 6 proposal checklist. So that's a nice one to just kind of keep referring back to make sure that you've got all your pieces covered. Another component that you'll see on that OregonBuys website is document 4 and 5. It's an Excel file that you can download, and that includes the scoring rubric that we'll use to evaluate proposals. So as we think about what the proposal looks like for you all to submit, just making sure that you, as you go back to that OregonVise website, looking for that list of documents that's included there. Don't forget to look at all of those additional documents, not just the RFGP itself, so you don't miss out on some of those pieces. Also, I should say, and Suzanne will mention this later, it's where things like the materials from today's session, as we talk about posting those, the Q&A and things like that, there are updates that we'll provide there in that space as well. More information from Suzanne on that a bit later. All right, so the first part of that proposal, that PDF that you're going to submit, is the proposer information form. So that is shared as document 1 for you all to fill out with some information about your organization. In addition to some of those details about your organization, there's also a portion of that information form that's about the project itself. And I would like to reiterate that those prompts are really intended for brief responses. So there's some questions about how workforce participants guide the work as the project unfolds. What are some of the counties and regions that the workforce impact will benefit? We also have a question where we're actually asking you to tell us what you think helps to make your project innovative. So you all know the project, the need, the community that you're a part of, whatever it is that you're representing in this work, you know it best. So help us to know what it is that you want to highlight that's a part of what makes that project innovative. And then again, brief responses. We do have one portion of the proposer information form that does have a maximum word count, so no more than 500 words for the project abstract. And the project abstract is just giving an overview of the project. It's helpful for reviewers to be able to see that overview. If the project is funded, this abstract also gets utilized in some of our grant managements and our how-to grant program documents and things like that. So that one we have a word count maximum just to help make that work for those other pieces of our process as well. All right. So that brings us then to the project narrative. And I think the project narrative is really the core of what you're submitting. It's telling us what is the problem that you're trying to address and how you're going to address it. So the suggested length for this portion of the proposal is less than 15 pages. It's described as suggested, right? So we're trying to give a ballpark estimate to the extent that it might be helpful for folks to have a sense of the level of or the depth and length of information that we're looking for, but really trying to reiterate that being specific, being clear and brief to try and help the rationale and the project activities really shine is helpful both for the reviewers and also hopefully for the proposers as well. Sometimes there's, I think, a sense that more is better. And I would say in this case, that clear, specific, brief, and to the point really helps the ideas and the project to shine. So definitely one of those spaces where more is not always better. That project narrative includes several sections. These are all outlined in the RFGP, but we just wanted to walk through and highlight a few pieces of them. And I did see a question about character or word limits from Justine. And the only piece of the proposal that has a word limit, so an actual word count limit, is that project abstract in the proposer information form.
And to just add to what Melissa was saying, explaining, it looks like Kathy's question about the project narrative and just plain language. So the state, as we publish things, we have a grade level requirement, or we try to bring it within a grade level. However, it is not something that is put on for you as the proposers. However, just be, as Melissa said, be as clear and concise as possible. More is not always better. So we hope that helps. There is actually on the DAS website, the Department of Administrative Services, their training website, it does have a plain language class that any of you might want to take. I mean, but I know that you would be just fine figuring out your plain language. Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, I think the sort of overall statement, right? This isn't intended to be sort of an academic research paper. It's really intended to be focused on helping to highlight the different pieces of the proposal. And I'll have Katrina, if you could go back one slide. Sorry, we have just a little bit more time on that one. So just in terms of what you're conveying in these different sections, the first piece there is that problem statement. What's the workforce shortage that's being addressed? We ask for some data on that. And then what are the contributing factors? So what's behind the workforce challenge that is trying to be addressed by this project? You'll be able to read through these pieces to page 8 of the RFGP has the breakdown of all of these. We ask for the goals, objectives, and outcomes, right? So what's going to result from the project? What are the measurable, what are the activities and the measurable outcomes? And then the program plan. So we know what the big picture of the problem that you're stating and what you hope comes from the project. The program plan is really that how, right? How are you going to take the goals and objectives and kind of break those down into putting a plan into action. And we have shared document 2 on Oregon Buys that is a timeline that helps to both show the timing of the different pieces and how they tie to the goals and objectives that you've shared. This will also be a part of our grant agreement writing process. So having those pieces outlined helps both the reviewers and it helps us in understanding the big picture of the plan. I would also say, don't forget to connect back to how those activities are related to the workforce shortage that you've addressed before, right? So each piece of these, it needs to continue to connect back to, what are those contributing factors that you're trying to address through the proposal. Just a couple more pieces to highlight real quickly. The evaluation plan. One thing to just note, sometimes folks will think about evaluation plan, the end result of the project, but the evaluation plan needs to be a plan to assess throughout the project. So how will you know if things are on track? How will you know when things need to be adjusted or not throughout? So not just the end assessment of the outcomes. We have the organizational capability that includes both the submitting organization and any partners that are part of the project, and then the program sustainability. And just wanted to highlight that partly in thinking back to what we've talked about for the how-to purpose, we're trying to support these training programs getting off the ground or new training opportunities getting off the ground. And we know that the how-to funds are for up to 3 years. So what happens after the 3 years? We want to hear from proposers what the plan is, what the expectation is for what mechanisms or strategies will be explored in the implementation to try and make sure that this doesn't just close up once the how-to funds are done. So knowing that those things can often evolve through implementation, what are the things that are going to be considered? All right. I know this is so much information, so thank you all for your patience as we're working through it all. Knowing that there is so much information that we've covered, we wanted to just highlight a couple tips of some common maybe areas that are overlooked as folks are putting together their proposal to help the proposal really connect back with how the program is going to be evaluating proposals and coming back to those how-to program values. So the first thing is just to really center around this idea of what is contributing to the workforce shortage and how does the project specifically address those workforce challenges. One of the things that we have seen at times in the past is that folks will spend a ton of time or space talking about the patient need, right? So the impact in the clinic setting, the impact on patient access, and then say, so we're going to add workforce. What we're really interested in, and just one of the things that you'll see outlined throughout the scoring rubrics, is how do the different strategies that are a part of the proposal, how are they reflecting back on the workforce challenges? So making sure that if it's trying to recruit people into a training program, what are the barriers that are preventing people from coming into that program, and how is this project addressing it? If it's trying to retain people in the workforce, what are the strategies what are the things that are keeping the current workforce from being retained? What are those barriers and what are the strategies to address them? Making sure, that the workforce approach really shines through in the proposal so that, we all know how much urgent need there is in terms of supporting patient care and patient access, helping to address these workforce shortages. They're complex, right? So what pieces of those challenges are you trying to address in your proposal? And knowing that there's not a one answer solution to these shortages, but why are you approaching the project, those challenges in the way that you are? What's the rationale behind it? So I just really want to reiterate that workforce part of the program is also reiterated throughout those scoring rubrics. So that's the Excel file document 4 and 5. It's one file, but there's 2 tabs in that Excel file. And just as you are, before you even start writing, as you continue to write, at the end of writing the proposal, continuing to come back to that scoring rubric to see that what you're sharing is helping to highlight those pieces of what we're looking for in the scoring. And you'll see that it over and over again, it's talking about, how is it addressing those workforce challenges? All right. So that then brings us to the budget narrative. We've got the core of what the project is going to look like. How then are those activities supported through the funds that are being requested? So going through that budget justification, the budget narrative also needs to include a plan for oversight of the award funds. And again, as we mentioned before, the proposals can take all kinds of different approaches to meeting these needs and trying to address the challenges that they're seeing. So that could include capacity building, it could be stipends, it can take on all kinds of different approaches. So we're just looking for understanding how the proposal is matching up with the budget and the rationale behind it. Then the last piece of that PDF that you're going to submit are just the appendices. So there's two components here. One is the letters of commitment from each partner organization. This is different than letters of support. We don't accept letters of support, which are those sort of more broad general statements of like, hey, we think this organization is great and they're doing great work, right? That really broad statement of a letter of support is not accepted as part of the proposal. But what we do need is a letter of commitment from each of the partners that are a part of your project. So we consider partners organization that has a substantial role in the project, and they may be contributing roles and resources, or they're receiving part of the funding that's being proposed. Those letters of commitment need to be specific. What are the expectations? What are the responsibilities and resources involved? And this is a great way to demonstrate both for your organizations and for the review committee and for the how-to program that everyone is in alignment right from the start on what those expectations are. As certainly as we know, there's lots of organizational change and shifting expectations or priorities. Having these letters of commitment be really specific about project responsibilities and resources helps to make sure that everyone's set up for success as the project moves forward. And then we do also ask for, it could be curriculum vitae, resume, or short biographical sketches for key project personnel as well. So that's the end of that PDF portion. We also have that additional Excel file that I mentioned that you'll be submitting that is included on the Oregon Buys website as document 3. And you do submit that as an Excel format. I know a lot of times we submit for kind of the PDF version to lock things in, but since we use that to double check calculations and we use that as part of our grant agreement process, we're asking for the Excel format of that file as well.
And we're asking for no rounding. They need to be hard cents if you're doing cents.
Yes, thanks for that. Yeah, because otherwise sometimes we'll get through it and there's things are off by a few cents here and there, and it can complicate the process as it moves forward. I saw a question about the document 2 timeline. We would prefer that it does, that you do use that timeline in the template provided. There's some flexibility, but we do need those pieces that are outlined in terms of the timing and the connection to the goals and objectives, so that we can connect those dots through our process as well. Yes, you can drop that into your document as you work your way through it. Sorry, all, as I'm just scanning through the chat here for some questions before we move into this next section, on which ones I can answer here. There are differences for sure from the How to Round 5 RFGP itself. We tried to simplify a few things. We tried to reduce some duplication across different sections. So it's very similar in terms of the big picture process, very similar in terms of the pieces that we're asking for, but you'll definitely see if you submitted a round 5 proposal, you can't just resubmit that. You'll need to work through the updated RFGP to make sure that you're utilizing that updated RFGP. I saw a question about the training. So the goals of the training can take on a whole bunch of different kinds of goals depending on what folks are proposing for their particular region or their organization's goals and focus. So it is really looking under that broad umbrella of trying to address healthcare workforce shortages, help to diversify the healthcare workforce, help to address inequities throughout the state that can be socioeconomic. It might be minoritized communities. It might be all kinds of different, there's so many needs. And so we are keeping the RFGP broadly open for folks to tell us the priority that they're trying to address. As we mentioned, taking a look at that rubric, that helps to continue to reiterate the priorities and values, but it can take on a lot of different goals because there are so many needs, right?
There's a couple of questions around foreign companies apply. One of them was, as long as they can foreign companies apply as long as they are providing services in Oregon?
That's a good question. I want to double check my answer before I say for sure. So I think I would like to answer that one once we get a chance to follow up.
Thank you.
I also saw a question about indirects. Indirects are allowed, and that's one of the pieces that we'll ask for an explanation. We don't set a hard and fast maximum, but we do want in the narrative to know, the reasoning, the rationale behind the particular indirect percent that is utilized. In terms of other appendices, if you have some references, you could always do like a footnote, or we're not asking for a formal reference page. And we wouldn't take any additional documents that we're not asking for, in terms of like sometimes if people have pamphlets or things that they've created for the organization, we wouldn't accept additional materials that aren't a part of the proposal itself. All right, I am seeing lots of great questions. One question I think I'll answer real quick, maybe not real quickly, but I'll answer before we jump into the submission process. And I'm also trying to keep an eye on time to make sure we get through all of our slides, and we might be able to circle back to some of these additional questions as well. There's a question about sort of implementation versus development. And I would say that it will depend on the project, right? So we've had some projects that are trying to get some pretty big projects off the ground in terms of trying to develop like a new residency program that may have a multi-year process for approval and collaborations and things like that. We might, there might be a process for the training to get its certifications, or those things might be as timelines stack up. It can really have a protracted process. It might extend the timeline. I would say it should be set up for success so that whatever is being proposed, if that timeline for development is longer than the timeline for funding, I would say that having a part of that evaluation plan and a part of the program plan that helps to talk about what you do know about whether it's being successful or not throughout the proposal. So it would just really depend on the project that's being proposed. All right, and as I see time, I know we've got about 30 minutes left. I'm going to hand it over to Suzanne to talk us through a bit of the submission process and the organ bias process, and keep seeing all these wonderful questions. So please don't hesitate to keep putting those questions into the chat. We're keeping an eye on which ones, as Suzanne said, which ones we are able to answer. We may circle back on some, and we are trying to keep all of those in mind. So we'll get answers to you even if we don't answer them in the moment. So
I'm going to at some point share my screen. So, hey, thank you for your time here. And I know you're so excited about the Oregon BICE submission process. So let's just dive right in. Next slide, please. So with this request for grant proposal opportunity, you must apply, or you must register to apply to be able to submit your application and document package. The website, as you know, we put that in the chat. It's also here in the, we'll do that again, in the slides. So please apply soon. You do not have to, you do not have to register to view the opportunity, as some of you have already done that. So if you'll go to the next slide. When you go to this website here, it will, there you go. You'll come to this page and you can type in the search bar right there. You have two options to either click bid solicitation right next to that drop down arrow, or you'll click something else. But to find it, you will type in the number or just 8989 and click bid solicitation and click on your hourglass, and it'll go to the next slide, and this is what you'll see. This is the list. You'll click on the number that's bold and underlined there under the bid solicitation number, and it'll open to this page. This tells you how many days, minutes, hours or less, and all the documents that Melissa was describing are in the file attachments here. You'll download those, you'll study them, and then you'll submit your document. Go ahead and go to the next slide. This is another part. So this is as you scroll down, you'll see that we have amended this a couple of times. So this is just a brief description of the amendments, or addenda as it is also called. And one more time. And Oregon BICE has its own set of terminology. So our amendment to bid means the same thing as an addenda, as I just explained. Our bid or bid solicitation also means the request for grant proposal, or RFGP. The bid opening date or opening date actually means the date that you need to have your documents uploaded into Oregon BICE by. You may also know it as a closing date in our old ORPN process. Your quote is your proposal response. So that's your application and your Excel file. So your PDF and your Excel file. So that's your quote. And you're either the seller administrator, you're either the vendor, the supplier, the contractor. But when you use the seller or seller administrator term, they mean the main contact for the organization, the vendor, the supplier, or the contractor. There is a link on that page that will take you to more glossary terms that are Oregon BICE specific. Thank you. Next one. Again, you must be registered as a vendor or supplier in Oregon BICE to be able to submit your proposal, to ask questions outside of this forum. There is what's called a question and answer tab on the when you log in. You'll see several tabs, and Q&A is one of those tabs that you can submit your question. We will be taking questions up till December 2nd, and then we will supply the answers so that you have enough time to get your proposal uploaded. Again, you'll just type the whole number or just 8989 into the screen of the search button. So next slide. We will upload as an addenda this recording, the questions that we're not able to answer during this recording, we will have a table of questions and answers that we will upload as a document, and and the transcript to this recording. Excuse me. Here are several links that might be helpful. Pardon me. This link here, this first link is a resource page for you as a vendor or supplier. There are some great information there. There is at least one video that might be helpful. There is a document. Let's see. This second one is how to submit your document, your proposal. So that's a PDF that you'll open up. And then if you aren't registered, there's a quick registration guide. And then of course, you can call Oregon Buys directly. The company that created this Oregon Buys e-procurement system is called Periscope. So you might see that kind of email if you call and you ask for help. They'll email you back, a summary of the help that they provided you, and it'll become from Periscope. Anyway, so that is their email address, and or you can give them a call. I would suggest taking the time and making sure that you give yourself time to upload your proposal in case you have to call. They are open till 6 p.m. Pacific time. I'm not sure 100% what time they are open for in the morning, but they are open till 6 p.m. Pacific for any calls. And I'm going to share my screen. Oh boy, I'd never done that before. Okay, let's see. Entire screen. Oh, entire screen. It's not choosing me. Share. Okay, here we go. And we're going to go to Oregon Buys. Oh, I should have done this already. Sorry about that. It'll just take me a quick second. I want to show you what the question and answer tab looks like. Okay. Here it comes. Everybody see it? Okay. It's working, I'm pretty sure. Well, this is a bummer. Oh, there we go. So you'll see tabs across. This is when you're logged in, you should see most of the same information. And so I'm referring to this tab right here, this Q&A tab. So if you have a question outside of these videos or these training opportunities, informational opportunities, you'll go to the solicitation, you will log in, you'll go to the solicitation, and here is the question and answer tab. So it gives you the opportunity to add a new question. And because you're logged in, it will let us know who that is. And any question that you have, we will make it available for everybody, for the public to see, because if you have a question, most likely somebody else might have a similar question. And then we will, these are open until, again, December 2nd, and we won't wait till then to ask questions. Obviously, as you can see, we will get the questions answered as soon as possible. And then we will have them answered within a couple of days after the closing date for questions. So have at it either way. Okay. I think that is all for me. How do I stop sharing? Oops, stop sharing. Did somebody do that for me?
It's not sharing, so it works.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Let's see. Is that a new OregonBuy's interface? I like, okay. Well, we've had it since I think 2019 is when the state started going to this e-procurement system. Well, no, the November 7th webinar will not be a repeat. We will be live again.
It is live, but it will be a repeat of the same slides.
Yes.
So yeah, we'll be live, we'll have the same slides. And just, as each session will have different attendees, we expect that we'll have different questions that may come up. And as Suzanne was mentioning, we have all questions that we receive are going through that Q&A on OregonBuy's, trying to make as much information visible to everyone along the way as we possibly can, so everyone gets to see the questions and the answers, and then making sure we're posting these recordings as well as the questions and answers there as well, so it can continue to be a resource and look back as the timeline to that December 16th deadline approaches. If you do email questions, we will ask you to submit them through OregonBuy's, just because it is a way for us to, again, make sure that everyone has access to it. So really starting with that OregonBuy's Q&A tab is your best bet and fastest.
Any other questions around OregonBuy's? You should be getting notified when if you have, I think if you've gone in and done something in OregonBuy's, or if that's, obviously if your agency has the NIGP codes chosen to get notifications, then when we change things on the solicitation, you'll be notified. So
I think Katrina, you could probably go ahead and stop screen sharing too. And Allison, excuse me, I would say, yeah, the questions are answered as quickly as we can when we receive them. It's just that we're trying the end date of December 2nd to receive questions. We're just trying to make sure we're not getting all the questions at the very end. So yeah, we'll be answering. Suzanne and I are busy as questions come in. We try to get those turned around as quickly as we possibly can to you all. So it's definitely our priority to get those things submitted.
If you ask them on a Thursday or Friday, don't expect them until Monday, at least. So some of us have different schedules, so.
All right. And
how do I get notification changes? You will need to contact OregonBuy's help desk for that. I'm not 100% sure. Yes, the questions in the chat, we've been keeping track of them and we will answer them and submit them as an addenda.
And I see we've got a little bit more time. I was just trying to take a look at some of the questions that, since we still have some time, to try and address a few more if that works for folks. I really wanted to prioritize if there's any questions for the OregonBuy's piece, definitely let us know. Otherwise, I'll start working through a few of the questions that I feel like we still could answer in today's time, if that works. All right. So I did see there was a question about making a proposal to raise awareness of training opportunities without having partnerships with agencies that are delivering training. I would say just in terms of some of the scoring rubric items, we ask about reflecting the needs of the community being served. So just trying to think about whatever is being proposed, that it's connecting to the challenges that whatever population is being focused on, that it's connected to that group to make sure that the approach that's being used is a good match, right? So it's not necessarily about individual, and I saw a question earlier about sort of, are we prioritizing partnerships versus single entity proposals? And it's not that we're prioritizing one or the other. It really depends on what's being proposed, and are the organizations and the project plan really helping to support the effectiveness of that proposal. So whether that's connecting to community in different ways or reflecting the needs of that particular region or community in different ways. It's part of one of the things that we hear is what people love about How To is how broadly stated the requirements are. It really lets organizations and communities articulate what they see as the need, the folks that are closest to the work, to be able to say, this is what we see, and this is what we think will solve it. The challenge of that then is sometimes we get a lot of really specific questions about, hey, what about this version? And it's likely that they're eligible, just want to utilize the RFGP to make sure you're covering the highlights to help us understand the program, the project that you're proposing, and really using the scoring rubric, that document 4 and 5, to think about how we're evaluating so that you're sharing how that project connects with those goals. So there's just so many urgent needs and so many really creative approaches to solving the needs, and we're excited to see that it's something that has been wonderful to see in previous rounds of funding, and just continues to demonstrate the great work that folks are doing across the state. But I know it also means we give some very broad answers on some of these specific questions about a specific kind of project. But all right, let's see. I saw a couple questions about sort of page limits and single spacing, double spacing, single spaces, or we're not, I should say, we aren't calling proposals ineligible based on page limits, right? We have a suggested length. And so suggested length is a guideline for everything other than that 500-word maximum for the project summary. So there can be some variation in how folks submit and the formatting and things like that. So we are keeping that as a suggested length. So whether that counts the table of contents, we kind of have that in mind. Because again, we're trying to reiterate that more isn't better, but also knowing that we want to see folks addressing those items that are outlined in the rubric as well.
As far as single space, double space, please refer to the RFGP opportunity notice, page 8. So section 8B, it's under the project narrative. We would like 12-point font. We would like, I think it's a single space.
And 1-inch margins, yeah. Yeah, I don't think we didn't say single space or double space on that one.
Okay, let's see here. Sorry.
There's also a question about working with high school students. We definitely have had previously awarded projects that work with high school students, so that is considered an eligible project as well. And I think I've said it a couple of the previous slides, but I want to reiterate, when we talk about training programs, oftentimes folks are thinking about recruiting new people in, and want to reiterate that we get a lot of proposals for recruitment. That is a great need, but it also includes retention, career advancement, those kinds of opportunities too. There's when we were talking about training programs, it's very, very broad. Again, trying to come back to these different needs and different approaches to trying to meet that need. Adele, great question. Yes, we did in round 5. We had page limits, maximums that were stated for many of the sections, and that resulted because of our system. If some folks go over and other people don't, it's considered more information so we're not able to include those folks from round 5. Those were considered ineligible if they had not followed those hard and fast rules. Because of that, that is why we have changed for round 6, so that we're listing a suggested length of 15 pages, so that we don't have that ineligibility based on a page maximum. That isn't how we wanted folks to be eliminated from consideration. And seeing that happen in round 5, we wanted to really make sure we made that change. All right. Well, you all have given us a lot to think about. I know we have some questions that we'll need to circle back to. As Suzanne said, this will be on our radar to follow up and get the questions pulled out and answered so that we can post those into Oregon Buys. As folks get into writing their proposals, I imagine more questions will continue to pop up. So again, using that Oregon Buys Q&A tab so you can see what other people are asking. Even if you don't think you have a question, I think sometimes it's really helpful to see what others are asking, and seeing the answers can just give us a different perspective. So that is going to continue to be there as a resource for you all. I know we've got a lot of information covered today, and just really excited to see such a big group with so much excitement and interest in the How To Round 6 funding. So thank you all. And like I said, if you want to attend the second session, you're absolutely welcome as more questions come up, but knowing that we are focused on the same PowerPoint. Thanks, everybody.